Hello, welcome back to BLENDERSUSHI Live Noding. In this episode, we're gonna be using the ScriptNode. Actually, I'm doing this kind of explorations using ScriptNode mainly in Sverchok, but I want to do some kind of like a general look on ScriptNode in Sverchok and also comparing it with ScriptNode in Animation Nodes. I really have to do this at some point, like properly, but this is kind of how I get there. Like I said many times, I wasn't originally like a programmer, and I'm still kind of learning. I think my level is just slightly above the basic level in terms of programming, and I'm getting a little bit more familiar with Python, although in what I'm doing, I'm usually just use nodes with occasionally I need to use Python in order to do what I'm trying to do. So here basically this is one example. I'm using Sverchok, and I'm doing a setup that I've done something similar using animation nodes at some point. So basically a bunch of objects, and then I'm being able to give it like a kind of like a rainbow like color, like randomly. This is possible because I'm working in HSV, hue saturation value color mode. Currently Sverchok doesn't have nodes that's dealing with color mode like HSV, RGB or other color mode. Animation nodes actually already have that nodes since the beginning, but here I'm using the Sverchok ScriptNode Lite to do it, and this is something that's kind of slightly advanced, but still this is only touching the scratching the surface. If you are working with a Sverchok ScriptNode, I recommend you to have some kind of familiarity with Python. And you have two options here, ScriptNode and ScriptNode Lite. ScriptNode allows you to make like a quick nodes, like a prototype of nodes. For example, like this example, petal sign, I just loaded, and then we're gonna get this petal sign script. This is an example of ScriptNode in Sverchok, and you need to define like a Sverchok functions and then return the input output, whatever it needs to do to follow this kind of rules. That's for ScriptNode, and there's another one which is called ScriptNode Lite. This is still in beta. This guy doesn't come with a example, but you can read the documentation at the GitHub. So this is GitHub of Sverchok, and this is the particular thread that's talking about this node and how it becomes what it is. It tells you how if you want to generate like a input and output sockets for the parameters, this is how you specify the thing. So this is very important. You just have to read it, and then it has some examples that's gonna help you to understand it more. It is slightly kind of more complex compared to the ScriptNode in animation nodes, but it's kind of interesting when you're able to use the ScriptNode inside the Sverchok environment, because Sverchok has this kind of like a system where you can vectorize easily, and also it has this they call it the nestiness, they call it, like a list inside a list inside a list. It's very Sverchok. It's very interesting once you understand it. But anyway, let's start from scratch and how I kind of get to this stage. I might not talk about the vectorization yet, but I'll talk about this the whole thing. So the idea is basically I want to be able to work in the HSV color mode, and Sverchok doesn't have nodes that's dealing with it yet. Maybe like we'll release won't be long. We have the nodes that does that in Sverchok, but because we don't have the node that does that functions, you can always go to and use ScriptNode and script your own like a quick nodes, or even like make your own nodes and contribute into Sverchok. So if you have something like in animation nodes, you have like these nodes already, combine color. So this node already does the job. Okay, you can work in the RGB like the usual color mode, RGB, and then, or you can also work in the HSV, hue saturation value. This is actually the mode that I want to work inside Sverchok, because it's allowing you to do like a easy control over the hue while keeping the saturation as it is, or maybe randomize the saturation and value instead of working in the red, green, blue channel. Yeah. So we already have it in animation nodes, and you can work in animation nodes if you want, but I kind of want it inside Sverchok. So I said, okay, I said to myself, I need to try it in using the ScriptNode and using Python a little bit. So yeah, if we are using Python, there's actually already a module, built-in module in Python that's dealing with that problem. That's called colorsys module, and colorsys module really like give you the functions that converting HSV into RGB and whatnot. So I'll import colorsys as CS actually in this case, and then CS actually, if we look at it under this module, we have a bunch of functions, and this is exactly what I need. See, HSV to RGB. So you can give like HSV kind of value, and then it will convert it to RGB for us to use. It's actually that simple. So if I say okay HSV, and then it's telling you okay, you need to use you need to provide this parameter or this argument, hue saturation value, and it needs, I think it can be like any value, floating value. So let's say I'm giving it like hue of 0, saturation of 1, value of 1, and I'm getting back red color. In order to see this more clearly, I'll be using animation nodes for a bit, and then I will switch to Sverchok. I'll have like this default cube. I'm gonna give it a material. I'm working in Blender render, Blender internal mode, so I can easily use this guy, object color. With object color set to white, you can override it using this object color attribute. So it's you can easily give it any color, right? And now if I go inside animation nodes, I can use the object attribute, and I can select my objects, the cube, and then specify the parameter. This is actually called color. You see bpy.data.objects name cube, and its color attribute. So I can easily plug this combine color node into this guy, and this will update. And working in the, let's see, I've zero out everything and then make alpha the transparency to 1. If I work in the RGB mode, we already know red value, green value, combine them together, you get yellow and blue. If you have all 1, you have white. It's a common, like a common knowledge. But if you work in HSV, if you give it a saturation value of 1, hue of 0 and hue of 1 is actually red color. That's also something that you learn by experiment with it. After a while, you know, hue of 0 is red. That's why here, if we are using HSV value of 011, we get like full red color in RGB. We can actually debug that using this guy. The combine, oh sorry, this is me talking about color sys in Sverchok and Animation Node. Save. So yeah, this combined color actually generate a type of color, the data type of type color, and this is for value RGB and A. We need to keep that in mind. Color is like 4 value. Sometimes you only need 3 value, but in this case, for object color, we actually need to specify 4 color. If we use it, we try to use like vector and try to plug that value, it will say value has a wrong type. In animation nodes, the data type is very important and it's a little bit more strict than in Sverchok. You will see later. So anyway, we already know how to convert HSV to RGB, and then if we actually want to make this node in animation nodes, we can do that by using animation nodes ScriptNode as well. I'll quickly make like a text in here. Switch to text editor, new, and I'll make here ANSV HSV to RGB .py. This is gonna be the code. The codes will be a little bit simpler in here. Let's say for the input, we're gonna assign like a data type of float. So we need a 3 data type, and it's gonna be like a hue, saturation, and value. This is if you're doing it using animation nodes. This is probably one way to do it. Import colorsys as CS, and then we already have this parameter variable for the input, hue, saturation, value. So all we need to do, we're gonna generate the output. The outputs in this case gonna be it's actually gonna be a vector, or it can be color as well. It's I'm not sure if I need to convert it, but I think, let's say, just output a color based on this hue, saturation, value, and name it RGB. So the RGB will be colorsys dot HSV to RGB. So this is the function that's already built inside Python. Hue, saturation, we just specify hue, saturation, value like we assign it here in this variable. And then if we create the nodes, let's name these nodes properly, HSV to RGB. And if we look here under subprograms, we have the nodes already. So this is how animation nodes, if you work with ScriptNode inside animation nodes, it's actually simpler than Sverchok. But you will see Sverchok is slightly different, and you can do some kind of vectorization. Name RGB is not defined. Okay, I just changed the variable name, so I need to update it here. Updates. Okay, now it should work. We can actually, we don't need combined color. Let's see. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but if I use this guy and plug this into the value, it will say value has wrong type. That's because this RGB is actually a color, but the color is expecting a 4 value. So in this case, I need to adjust this a bit. Well, instead of RGB, I need to say RGB. Let's make another output of type color, RGBA. So RGB itself is a vector, can be a vector. And if we debug it, I think it should work. It's give you like a vector. a vector value based on the color, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, maybe it's still not working properly. Anyway, RGBA should be I think I should do it like this: RGB equal CS HSV to R. I'm gonna copy this and then paste it here, and then the RGBA is gonna be RGB with a alpha value. Yeah, I think this is correct. Update it. So now it seems to be happy with it. Let me zero this out and then check this. So like I said, with HSV converted to RGBA, 011 is 100, it's red color. And okay, that's the vector, but the RGBA should be correct now. There you go, that's working. So hue, this is like a HSV color mode, and then it's converted into RGB, so it's working properly. Now I want to do it inside Sverchok, so how much different is it gonna be? So let's quickly have a look. Switch to Sverchok, new, and I'm gonna be using SN ScriptNode Lite, SN Lite, and I will have another text here, and this is gonna be SV HSV to RGB .py. Now with ScriptNode, if we want to make like a ScriptNode, we are using this input and output parameter creator. So we need to manually do it, but inside Sverchok you kind of you just need to type it and specify up here. So for a more advanced scripter, this is something that you want to have. There's an example here. So triple quote marks to demark the header. The header is where you specify the input and the output. I'm just gonna copy this and then paste it in here. Let's generate like input and output first of all. So in, out. So let's say we're gonna switch to Sverchok. So let's do something that's actually just like a test. First of all, the input is gonna be HSV. The output, let's say, just call it RGB. The type is actually optional with the output. Oh, actually, no, the type, I'll just make it S. I think it's either scalar or string. I don't know what it is, but it's we will see anyway. The input for now, I'll just also give it scalar, and then the default we can also say D, and then defaults maybe like 0.5. Nestedness is a concept that's a little bit tricky to explain, but I think I just give it a value of 1 at the moment. And for the output, I will just say RGB, the output, equal HSV times 2. Let's say it like that, and then load it in here, HSV, and then load it. It should work. So if we check it in here, we get 1. It seems to be super slow at the moment. I don't know why. Is it printing something? Float has no length. I might forget something here. It's just a bit slow at the moment, but maybe it's the nestedness kind of doing something. Anyway, at least this works. So if we give it like 0.5 times 2 equal 1.00. Okay, so it is working. So we need just to convert like the Python codes to fit the Sverchok kind of environment. Sverchok has this thing, one thing that I need to mention. Maybe I kill this for now. Sverchok has this thing that's unusual. If you create like a vector, for example, and the vector, we know it's gonna output a vector, right? Of course, but it's in Sverchok it's become like a nested, like a list inside a list. So that's a single vector value. But Sverchok has these vectorizations. So if we actually provide like random number, for example, and we know that random number will generate a bunch of random number here. This is like 10 random numbers in integer. We can switch to float. We have 10 number in float, maybe make it 5. So only 5 values, floating values. If we plug these multiple values into the vector, this guy suddenly become vectorized. That's like the magic in Sverchok. You don't need to do like a loop or think about generating. It's just gonna work. For most of the nodes in Sverchok, if you provide like multiple values, it will update everything and to work it for multiple values. That's a concept that's important later on. For now, I will not deal with a vectorization yet. Maybe that's in the next live noding, but I just want to convert this RGB value into HSV. I will do the same thing like in animation nodes and do it inside Sverchok. So like I said, with Sverchok scripted node light, you just type in the parameters. This what do they call it? They call it the header. Okay, just type the header in between this triple quotation mark, and then it will generate the input for you, input output. I'm gonna do this real quick. Input's gonna be hue, saturation, and value. SSS, the default 0.5, 0.5 doesn't matter. Maybe just 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Nestedness 1 should be okay. RGBS should be okay too. And then load it. It's complaining because HSV is not defined. Oh, we don't have variable name HSV. We need to use the hue saturation value. This is our variable. Okay, hue saturation value. So the RGB, so we need to just import the colorsys here exactly, just like before, and RGB equals CS dot. Just copy this, guys. The same thing. Oops. Copy. Paste. So we are using Python code basically to output the RGB. Reload should generally works. Stethoscope and then have a look. 0.3, 0.2. Yep, this should be working. 111. 111. This is red value, and then invalid token string. It's complaining about something. Never mind that. So anyway, so yeah, our HSV to RGB is working. One thing that I always kind of want to do is, of course, in Sverchok, I want it to be able to vectorize. If I say, okay, I want to give a random number generator, and I'm gonna be using float, give it 5 value, and plug into the hue, and then it's complaining, hey, doesn't work like that. It says can't multiply sequence. Yeah, basically something wrong with the code. You can't just plug in a multiple value like this. It doesn't quite work like that. Cut it. So yeah, so that's in order to vectorize, you actually there's a cool thing in SN Lite that you can do. It's still in beta, so be careful if there might be a bugs. But anyway, if you use the injection, there's the auto inject in the parameters. That's all you need to do is just to insert inject here, and then you just need to, let me open my cheat sheet. So I put injection here, and then parameter vectorize the parameters. You need to do it like this. For all parameters, vectorize. Actually, vectorize all the parameters, all here hue saturation value, and then assign it into these params. What's gonna happen is, if we print the params, for example, param 0, and reload, it's actually printing out our random general number here. So it's kind of almost kind of work, but we need to make changes also with the out RGB. So we need to zip the parameters, and I think this is kind of work if I just copy paste this. Oops. This is using Python list comprehensions. Slightly more complicated if you're not used to it. I believe this actually will work. Params 1, 2, and out RGB. I'll just say it like this. Reload, and you can see in the stethoscope here, now there's a multiple value for the hue actually kind of works for the RGB. So we managed to generate this vectorization very quickly, although of course for our purpose here for these objects we need to provide RGBA, and that's a slightly trickier to add into here. No, it's actually not that tricky if you just assign it using a for loop or something, or another list comprehension. But anyway, this is kind of the workflow. The injection thing and the vectorization is actually very cool feature of Sverchok, because you can now just assign it like a multiple value, and this guy will actually update. This will work correctly. You see the RGB is now 5, size of 5, and then it takes multiple input right away. It's very interesting in Sverchok that it's able to do that. The only thing missing, of course, is the alpha, and the alpha needs to be part of this parameters somehow. Maybe I should talk that about that topic in the next live noding. But anyway, if you want, I think if you want to do the vectorization thing in animation nodes, you need to like create a list, and you need to loop it somehow. If I'm not wrong, let's try. This is animation nodes, float list, create a float list. Okay, multiple value. This float list is gonna be the hue, and so we need to put it inside the loop. This is we call it a hue. So the hue list goes in, and now we can use our nodes, this goes in there, and we can output the RGBA, I believe, as a vector list. If I'm not wrong, this actually will work. And if we debug this, yeah, that's the output. It's gonna be like a multiple list. So you need to do the list. It's sometimes it's slightly simpler this way, but because you're doing it, I think because it's the convenience of the animation nodes environment, it's just a different way to think of it. They both kind of doing it differently. Like I said, you need to be in a more advanced level in Sverchok. See, you can type the whole thing as a script and then get the result vectorized. With animation nodes, you do some kind of loop and you get this output, and maybe you want to assign this unit to another. You need to have another loop if you want to assign this into multiple objects, which can be okay, but let's try object list. Okay, create object list and get our object 1, 2, 3, and this our objects. We plug it into this guy, and we assign it using object attribute. This is our color. Still, okay, this is a color. This is an RGB, and we are expecting an RGBA, so we need to have combined color here. This is the funny thing. That's we need to do it anyway. RGB. This is HSV. Actually, this is already RGB. Okay, sorry. I think I did everything correctly. So saturation, there's a value. I think I did randomize the HSV from here. There you go. It's not like totally random. I'm controlling this value 1, 2, 3. Somehow I'm not controlling the first one, but I'm controlling this guy and this guy. Oh, because I'm specifying the wrong cube. There you go. 1, 2, 3. This is how you do it inside animation nodes. The nodes will grow bigger a little bit faster, and then you will use a lot of loop in and out. This is I think for beginner, this is easier to digest than the one in Sverchok, but with Sverchok, more advanced, it can be cleaner, and yeah, it's just a different methods to work with. Of course, everything, you know, every nodes can be turned into just a script. However, I think for most people, especially like a non-programmer like me, I like to work in and out the script, and I only use the script only for certain part. Like in this case, converting HSV into RGB, and then using the RGB, converting it into RGBA for this purpose. Yeah, hopefully this is kind of clear up a lot of things. I'm like I said, I'm working using Animation Nodes and Sverchok for whatever I'm doing. Still learning Python besides all this node stuff. Eventually, I think I understand all of this and can probably explain it better. But anyhow, they're all interesting. I challenge you and even kind of encourage you to try using the nodes while if you're like you want to like use program a bit, but and you already have like 100 of nodes here that's kind of help you do stuff, but at some point you want to understand Python scripting a little bit better, so you can do more. Even just by a little bit, you can do a lot more just by using a bit of Python, get the use Python modules that's already available out there, and then use it for your own works. It's gonna be really, really powerful that way. So yeah, even though this is just like a converting hue saturation value into RGB, it's really like super simple problem. But think of it this way: you can modify the script to whatever you need, and especially if you can use like vectorizations, like in Sverchok, it's really powerful. You see how many nodes is this? Only one, and actually this is just Sverchok owns generators, and everything just work. So this is amazing. All I need to do here is just to work with the RGBA, and really I think I use loop in my code in order to do that. It's actually not that hard, just slightly confusing here with the list comprehensions in Python and with a loop in Python. If you're not familiar, if you're familiar, it's so easy to do anyway, from RGB to RGBA. So it's almost there. Maybe on the next live noding I'll talk about this RGBA thing and use it in application here. One of the simplest application, of course, is to assign the color RGBA into the object color. Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this live noding. Sorry, it's a bit long. If you have any comments, suggestion, any feedback, just let me know down below. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.